Welcome to this meeting of the Audit Committee. Please note that this meeting is being live broadcast to YouTube for the public to see and hear the proceedings. Please ensure your phone is set to silent mode and turn your microphone on when speaking, please. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please follow the council officers out of the building and do not use the lift. You may see that from time to time I will be speaking to the officers beside me who will be guiding me through any procedural points. As the Chair, I am entrusted to maintain decorum of this meeting. I would therefore like to remind councillors that respect is to be shown to all members and officers in this chamber. When someone is speaking, I would ask that other members listen and do not hold their own private conversations. Any councillors who do not respect this will be reminded. So, turning to the agenda. Number 1, apologies and substitutes. Please note that in advance of the meeting, the membership of the committee was updated and Councillor Chandler stood down. Her role of the committee has been filled by Councillor Bortflower. Welcome to the meeting, Councillor Bortflower. Do we have any apologies? No. Okay, thank you. So, item 2, minutes. Does the committee agree the minutes of the meetings held on 24th of February and 26th of March as a correct record of the proceedings? Okay, thank you. I've got them here. I will sign those minutes at the end of the meeting. Item 3, disclosures of interest. Does any member have a disclosure of interest to make in relation to any item on the agenda? We, of course, have the standing declarations that Councillor Nichols is a member of the board of Nell Green Estates and Councillor Woodward is a member of the board of Spelthorne Direct Services. So, any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Item 4, the Governance Assurance Register update. This item was circulated as a supplementary agenda pack sharing the overall assurance level for the 12 governance assurance areas, which will form the new Governance Assurance Register and the reports for 6 of the governance assurance areas. Before I ask each officer to speak, Lee, would you like to present the overall position and update the committee on the implementation of a new governance assurance framework policy? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and evening members. Members will be aware that we've been working with our external advisor, Rob Winter, on developing a new approach to risk management, which focuses on the effectiveness of the Council's governance and control arrangements. The Council's new governance assurance framework and policy was adopted by the Corporate Policy and Resources Committee on the 19th of January. Work's been progressing on developing all the necessary supporting documentation, including how the Council will capture and manage its key areas of assurance, the assessment process, roles and responsibilities, and how and when this is going to be reported. As part of that work, the Council's previous corporate risk register has been adapted and aligned to the new governance assurance register, focusing on 12 key areas of assurance. Whilst this work's been undertaken, risk owners have continued to maintain an oversight of key risks during the transition process. The report outlines how we progress with this work, including training for both officers and members, and how group heads have been fully engaged with the process to help populate the assurance information. Senior management in the form of MAP+, that is a management team plus group heads plus some other senior managers, have considered all the 12 assurance areas for moderation and quality control, and they'll continue to maintain ownership and oversight of these areas through monthly governance-focused meetings. Appendix A in your paper shows the 12 governance assurance areas which are going to form the basis of the Council's new governance assurance register, with overall assurance level assessment shown for each one as is either low, medium or high. Appendix B provides the governance assurance reports for the 6 governance areas we're asking the committee to review and comment on for this meeting, and we have the relevant risk owners with us this evening to present their reports. And just in summary, these will be covering the inclusive economy, affordable housing and demand, emergencies and business interruptions, equality, diversity and inclusivity, financial management, and our governance arrangements to deliver the Improvement Recovery Plan. The remaining 6 governance areas will be brought to the next meeting of this committee on the 23rd of June. This new approach is designed to give the Audit Committee confidence and assurance that the Council's governance arrangements are effective and being complied with. And the focus of this committee should therefore be around those arrangements around risk management, governance and control, whereas service committees will have a greater role in scrutinising the detailed governance assurance registers of their respective departments and services and how well those service areas are performing. Appendix C in your pack is a timetable outlining the dates of future updates to be provided to both the Audit Committee and the Service Committees. So that's there for you to consider, and I hope you're okay with the way that's laid out. The new Granicus inputting form and Power BI report has been developed by our ICT team working with Rob Winter, and this is designed to be a self-sufficient process. Unfortunately, we did have a few, as with a lot of new systems, a few teething issues with the way the system was set up, which made it a little bit more challenging than we initially anticipated for governance owners to update their areas. So it took us longer than we'd hoped to finalise and publish these reports. But we've now managed to iron out these issues, so the process for next time around for the June committee should be a lot more straightforward, and you'll get them much earlier in the process. As Rob Winter mentioned to the committee at its last meeting, the information we're providing to give you the assurance and the way we're presenting this needs to work for you. So one of the purposes of this session and the next session in June will be for you to give us some feedback on how it works for you and whether you think it covers the areas sufficiently, and then we can see whether we can make any further improvements. So that's all I wanted to just say as an introduction, Chair. So I don't know if you wanted to take people through.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Lee. Does anyone have any questions for Lee before we go into the 6 governance assurance areas? No. Right, so I would like to welcome each officer to present their governance assurance areas in turn. The committee will then be able to ask questions on that area before we move on to the next area. So the first area we have is ensuring an inclusive and prosperous economy, and Dave Anderson is going to present that one. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lee. Excuse me, I got a bit of a frog in my throat. Yeah, the focus of this assurance area is on the economy, and it's about ensuring the economy is both prosperous and inclusive, and that fundamentally is critical to underpinning the success of everything we try to achieve in Spelthorne. And we need to ensure that we have a strong relationship with business. We understand their needs, we understand their opportunities as a local authority, and we help them as far as we possibly can to grow and to prosper within Spelthorne. So there are a number of specific areas of focus in relation to this particular aspect of assurance. The first concerns supporting business sustainability, and that's really very much about having an engagement framework, a basis for interacting with the some 2,000 businesses that we have across Spelthorne. We have a very small economic development team with Chris Norrington and Julia as the 2 dedicated staff there, but all council officers at one point or another will interact with business. We don't have the luxury of an account manager system where we've got each business kind of personally man-marked by a council officer, and therefore we need to be I suppose judicious about which businesses we engage with, making sure that we are on top of the large businesses, understanding their needs, the BPs, the Shepherds and Studios of this world, but also the large public sector employers, what's constraining their growth and where there are opportunities to support them. So the approach that's taken in this area is very much some one-to-one activities, keeping in touch with very significant employers, but also lots of what I would call one-to-many activities, business networks, putting businesses in touch with each other, supporting them through the supply chain wherever they can to, tap into local opportunities. And clearly at the present time, the expansion of Heathrow is going to be a big opportunity for all local businesses on the assumption that that proceeds at some point. So a lot of discussions are around that and other similar opportunities. With regard to how we go about this at the present time, we have a business growth service that supports those businesses that are looking to get active support to help them grow their turnover, to grow their profitability, to grow their workforce. And we also refer businesses to organisations that may be relevant for them if they're in tourism and hospitality sector, for instance, Visit Staines, the Staines Bid, other organisations that are promoting the area and putting on events and activities in the area that people can benefit from. One of the focuses or foci of the present effort is the Business Awards. We've launched those awards. This is the last year of Spelthorne's Business Awards. We already had some healthy number of applications. I know Chris is working hard to get an optimum number as we go into the awards in October. And another major area of focus at the moment is the development of a business improvement district in Ashford to mirror what's been done in Staines. So I'll stop at that first area of business engagement framework, take any questions before moving on. Okay, moving swiftly on then, thank you. Beg your pardon, sorry, Councillor Butler and then Hawkins.
Councillor Hawkins.
What actual proof is there that you're getting, how many people you actually managed to get employed through this?
There's an evaluation approach in relation to measuring the number of jobs that are created by employers with whom we're interacting. There's not necessarily a causal relationship because we as a council don't create jobs in the private sector create jobs, but it's our responsibility, I think, to be close to those businesses. So if they are struggling, for example, with a skilled workforce, to identify intermediaries such as the Job Centre plus Network, Brooklands College, etc., and to prepare customised training programmes that mean they've got skills to tap into. So it's possible to evaluate jobs created. It's also possible to evaluate the impact of those jobs which are created in terms of the overall prosperity of the economy.
So, because you're not actually, so are you not crossing over and whatever on job centres work in places?
Well, Job Centre has got a very specific remit to place people in jobs and to help people access training to find jobs. That's not our core purpose, but we do support the Jobs and Skills Hub, which is intended to deal with, in particular, those young people furthest from the labour market who may need most support to get into jobs. In other words, those that aren't really employer ready because they haven't got the requisite soft skills and other skills to get into the job market. Some of that is funded by Job Centre Plus.
But there's no sort of concrete proof that it does anything good or bad?
Well, there's a lot of evaluation and evidence nationally from Job Centre Plus and development agencies that are looking to track the success of interventions by the use of public funding in terms of supporting jobs. I've got a lot of experience in Scotland where, we've intervened in when company closures have been there, retraining people for other jobs, and there's a huge raft of, evaluation evidence out there that with that intervention and support, people find work more quickly. I worked in Edinburgh when the banks were under pressure in 2008, and we took a lot of people from RBS, for example, and we managed to get them jobs in small, medium enterprises because they had the essential financial skills to work in those businesses. They wouldn't have necessarily found those jobs as quickly had it not been for us intervening. So,
yeah, no, I was just wondering how it was fitting in with Spelthorne, that was all.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you turn around and actually come across people that you turn around and say recommends Terry for his department or Sandy for hers or stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's important.
There's always sort of vacancies.
Yeah, I think it's important that we look at the public sector as well, and both the council's own opportunities and the NHS and other big public sector employers. The gap appears to be, in the 18 to 24-year-old kind of job market with young people who have left the school system, not necessarily done well academically, but are not yet work ready. And that's where, measures such as apprenticeship training come in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Terry just wanted to come in.
Just And so picking up on 2 points. So one, in terms of internal referrals into the organisation as such, particularly linked to apprentices, and because amongst that activity, the team do support job fairs and encourage apprentices, and certainly in past years, the finance team actually, when we were recruiting apprentices, one of the apprentices came via that route, and actually they've done really, really well. So that is an example of the point you're making. And in terms of the element which is funded by the DWP, we do a monthly return where we provide data in terms of what the impact which has been made. So there is some external evaluation as well in terms of some elements of the activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Yeah, Councillor Bortflower, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. It's good to see some bits in there green. I think from my side, it's about the local economy, where I don't want to mention COVID, but since COVID, things have changed. So on a Monday night, Staines is empty, and other nights of the week. On Friday night, it's reasonably, not what it used to, busy. How are we trying to help businesses to get people out on a Monday and the weaker days of the week to boost their their business? Because what I do see is some businesses will either not open on a Monday, and that seems to be coming slightly into play, or they can't afford their staff. So there will be redundancies or job cuts. I see that really as a red rather than an amber, because I don't see it improving. And I can't see how, and I've not seen anything, social media or anywhere, to have this big relaunch of our towns. Ashford's another one, but not slightly different to Staines, because Staines has got all the restaurants, the bars, etc. It's got the locations for it, but it hasn't got the trade. I'd be interested to see how you can plan to get the trade in.
Okay, well, I mean, I think there's a number of points to make there. I mean, short of getting Chris Norrington out as a town crier and getting people out on a Monday night, it might be difficult. But we do work through the Staines bid to promote, as it were, kind of activities and events that get people into town centre at times they might not otherwise be inclined to. We can't insulate Spelthorne from the macroeconomy, and it's a stated fact that over 400,000 jobs have gone in the hospitality sector across the UK over the last 2 years. I won't get into political territory, but the costs of doing business have increased, and there are clearly challenges there in terms of the cost of living crisis and people's disposable income. So I think it is about creating an attractive town centre. Some of that's around the Staines master planning work that's currently underway to look at how can we make this a more attractive place. I commute down from Scotland and kind of live here during the week for several days. You could do a lot more with the waterfront, in my humble opinion, in terms of a kind of leisure space, etc. There are things that can be done, but it's considering the council's kind of own resources, and in economic development we've got a really rather small kind of resource to be focused on that. So it's a matter of every person in the council being an advocate for the economy. When I worked in Cheshire West, that was the mantra. Everyone promotes the message that Cheshire West is open for business, and you engage everyone that's working here, and that's where partnerships also come in terms of leveraging your influence across partnerships, being aware of issues such as the likely impact of the BP move out of Sunbury, because while jobs may be protected, that will take a significant amount of spend out of the local economy in terms of supply chain and local restaurants, etc.
Thank you for that answer. Just slightly carrying on. So the Premier Inn Hotel on the corner seems extremely busy, which is great and incredible. My friend stayed there and went to meet them there to take them out. I didn't see anything in that reception at all promoting from Spelthorne Borough Council what's around. I think we're missing opportunities. It's great to have this bigger view, but the detail will help people go to, you know, one of the restaurants may say, you know, put our advertising in this week to be the first thing people see to get them to go there because they've got poor business. Is there any plans on that?
Well, I think that's a fair point and a valid one. We've got Visit Staines and we've got the Staines bid, and you know they are funded and self-funded to promote that kind of activity. I mean, I've stayed in that Premier Inn more times than I wish to recall. You know, I found my way out into the high street, and I've eaten at most of the establishments, so I could give you a gourmet's guide to them. But I think it is a good point about how do we promote people shopping in you know, Spelthorne, dining out in Spelthorne, spending their, you know, wages in Spelthorne. There's a wider point there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Neil.
Hello, thank you. The red status on regular evaluation stands out. I note that, you know, you can't really do anything with it till the board starts. My question is just, you know, I note the point that metrics and updates have been requested from partners. What arrangements do you have in place to get this board started and get that status up to amber if those partners either don't respond or drag their heels responding?
Yeah, well, I think it's a matter that probably needs to be escalated through Gordon as Chief Executive to try and engage with people. You know, we're talking to the economic stakeholders. At Chris Norrington's level, he's nudged me on a couple, and I think it's important that we get people around the table, you know, and clarity on roles and contributions and how, you know, a board of that kind can work. My experience in partnerships is mixed. I once heard a council chief exec declare a partnership is a bit like an elephant giving birth to a mouse. You know, there's a lot of effort going in, but the product at the other end isn't necessarily commensurate with the effort. So I think the important thing about a partnership is being clear about the purpose of the partnership, what the partners are contributing, getting the right people around the table so they can make decisions, and then, you know, championing the, you know, it's the case for Spelthorne. I've worked in Glasgow and with a Team Glasgow kind of approach with the Chamber and all the key stakeholders, likewise in Edinburgh. So, you know, unity takes you quite a long way if you've got a clear vision about what you want to achieve. Okay.
Okay.
Moving swiftly on to local supply chains. There's already work underway in Source and Surrey, and the latest development with Source and Surrey is the application of artificial intelligence to some of the requirements of specific businesses. So matching up local supply with local demand. It's at the early stages, but you know that is going to be a powerful potential weapon to actually say we need some widgets. You know, this company over here can produce them, and you know get this stuff made and produced locally. So that's a key opportunity. Quite clearly, the other one will be Heathrow, and you know we've got the Heathrow Economic Working Group within the council, but we've got several other groups that officers are members of, and looking at both the construction opportunity in the early years and the longer term supply chain opportunities will be significant. I think it's recognised that Spelthorne potentially has some disbenefits as a result of Heathrow, and it's important that we optimise the benefits. So the buyer supply exchange is another mechanism for that. And a lot of the work that Chris does is about getting out there in networks and getting people talking to each other rather than the council being the solution. It's about facilitating those connections amongst businesses. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Councillor.
Okay, the Heathrow one, how will it really happen?
That's a $64 million question.
I realise we're all turning around and talking about it. I mean, it was just, you know, the HSA debacle today.
I don't think you've got enough time, Chair.
I was going to say, I'm not.
Will it happen in my lifetime?
Yeah.
How long's a piece of string? You know, I don't think that's a question that we can ask, or that we can answer here in the Audit Committee.
Yeah, I mean, the received wisdom at present is that the development consent order will be laid before Parliament if the current government goes its full term. So, 2029, and the signals we're getting from Heathrow Airport Group Limited are more positive of late. There seems to be some real momentum moving on that. And the debate there was about the alternative bids, there seems to be some coming together. So it's looking more likely to happen.
It's slow progressing.
Than less likely. But, I'm not going to place any money on anything to do with central government.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to skills partnerships, we've got strong relationships with Brooklands College, with the Skills Board there to identify local needs. We are represented on the Local Skills Improvement Partnership. These are national initiatives from government in every area to look at the longer term skill requirements of the local economy, and we're represented in that. And we've also had meetings with the Jobs and Skills Partnership Board. One of the things, and I started my career in skills, is that the landscape around skills is always quite complex, and there are multiple players. So the role of the council in many ways is trying to make sense and bringing those together to really focus on local needs, and to make sure that not only are we providing vocational, technical and technological and professional skills for people once they leave school, but actually young people are coming out of the school system with skills that are more directly related to the needs of the economy. So a lot of work is going on in that area, and I think at the present time, given our resources, it's very positive work that's taking place. Likewise, in relation to employment support, the council took a decision to maintain the Jobs and Skills Hub, which I think is an essential resource for young people who are in the so-called NEET group, not in education, employment or training. That provides a support that is only mirrored in one other prospective West Surrey Council area. And in my experience, some measure of support for young people who are otherwise left behind is going to be necessary, because if they're not given something positive to work towards and acquire skills, then they become a drag on the economy. So, I think it's important we continue to promote opportunities for young people in this area. And another point I would make, having worked in the length and breadth of the UK, is you can see some of the symptoms in the southeast that I've been long used to in the north of England and Scotland, in terms of people becoming dislocated from the economy because the structure of the local economy is changing. So I think it's much more important in that regard that you're interventionist and you're able to continue to provide skills and capacity for young people to get opportunities, to improve and to progress jobs and careers.
Actually, Dave, do you want to go through the rest of the report of your section? Sorry, I'll come back. Councillor Williams. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
It was more comment than the question. We sort of focused a lot on young people and job and skills, but it's also important to remember they do also cover older people. Yeah. And we have a particular problem in Spelthorne that a lot of people were displaced from their workplace because of COVID out of relatively unskilled jobs at Heathrow. And so the Jobs and Skills Hub does quite a good job of getting them retrained and back into work as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for that. That is a kind of key issue as well. I would agree with that. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dave. I was just saying, do you want to just cover the rest of your points in here?
Yeah, well, the point on evaluation was touched upon by Councillor here. I mean, we are looking at how do we measure this impact, and Councillor Hawkins raised it as well, to make sure that we are able to demonstrate that the investment we're making is giving us a return on investment, both in economic terms but also in social terms. So there's work underway at the present time, pending the formation of this Economic Development Board, to take a consistent approach across the borough as a whole, and to ensure we have a dashboard for measuring the impact of if you like, their inputs and activities and processes, but they're all intended to lead to better outcomes. So we need to make sure those activities are happening and that there's a direct correlation between what we are doing and the results we're achieving. And as Councillor Howkins said, we need to be able to measure the impact as well. So that's work in progress at the present time. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any more questions for Dave or Philip?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Dave. But my reflection and comment isn't so much on the document here itself. It's more on the process in which we're going through. So what we're looking to achieve today is rolling out the framework and the way in which we're going to assess governance. And my reflections from doing this, this is exactly what we want to be able to see risk assurance owners sort of presenting their overview of the risk. Just a couple of points that are springing to my mind is the format with the focus on assurance aspects, actions, does now, I'm thinking, it sort of seems to leapfrog the risks. What we haven't been presented with so much is an analysis of the risks. We've had a good description of the actions and the things that are going there, but it wasn't so much of a discussion around the risks as they see. So yeah, it's just a reflection. I'd like to see KPI, the point about the KPIs, which is the red one, that also drew to my attention. Is those KPIs going to be across the whole of the assurance areas, or is that KPIs in relation to a
There will be specific KPIs for this assurance area, which is the inclusive and prosperous economy, but there'll be other KPIs in other colleagues' presentations. So across the piece, there will be KPIs for each area of service or operations of the council. With regard to the point on risk, and Lee might want to add to this, but this is a different form of governance assurance model from the traditional risk register, which quite often would, in my lengthy experience in the public sector, lead to a register being updated each month without proper discussion about what actions need to be taken to deliver the results we're trying to achieve here. So this, I think, is more of a focus on the things we ought to be doing, and we can only do our bit, in a kind of macroeconomic environment. There'll be all sorts of risks out there, not least in the Gulf at the present time, that will blow us off course, but we want assurance that what we're doing within the authority is our level best to deliver the right kind of results and to prepare for future opportunities and to mitigate economic threats. Yeah.
That's all my comments for that. It'd be interesting to see how the other presentations sort of coincide.
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting you should say that, Philip, as I think, because this is a learning curve for us as well. So we just got to make sure we're focusing it in the right way. And Dave's fantastic, the very first guinea pig to do this, and I think he's presented it very well. But I mean, mate, perhaps we just need to relate it back to the risks, and this is what we're doing in terms of things and going forward. And that's what we'll do. And certainly the KPIs, we are doing a lot of work on KPIs, and Sandy's been working on the KPIs across the organisation and trying to make sure we match them up with the governance areas. The idea will be more going forward, that the service committees will monitor those KPIs and check that their performance is actually hitting what it should be. So you can obviously, as a committee, know what those KPIs are, but actually those service committees will be challenging on those going forward.
It's not criticism, it's thinking out loud.
That's fair points.
Yeah, I mean, as Lee says, it is a new process, so we're obviously welcome to suggest changes and benefits. Yeah, Terry wanted to come in, then Councillor Nichols.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And good challenge, Philip. And as Lee says, and the Chair says, this is a learning process. And I think, and just one other aspect, just from my observation, I think that focus on what the high-level risk is, I think, where the opening assurance assessment is also important, because that's touching on what is the assessment of risk if we don't have appropriate governance in place. So maybe that's something we just need to be mindful across all these assurance areas in terms of just how we're articulating that at the high level in terms of what is that risk assessment. So, but as colleagues saying, this is something which I'm sure we're going to refine over time. Thank you.
If I might just, Chair, add to that point Terry's made, I think if you've got an economic dashboard, you've got the equivalent of early warning signals that, suddenly, there's an uptick in unemployment, for example, or there are layoffs at particular local employers in a specific sector. If we're monitoring those kinds of things, constantly, we can intervene at an early point and kind of mitigate, some of the problems that are caused by that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. My point is general. I think this is really, really good. There's lots of really good stuff in this. But picking up on part of Philip's point, we have in purposes and outcome effectively somewhere where, the purpose is to mitigate risk is one of the purposes. And also the other most important section is on status. And I think it's something that over time, possibly it's for Lee, there is some inconsistency in the level of detail and the approaches. And I think it could be tightened up a little bit. I'm not going to pick out any examples of superfluous statements or things which don't seem to join with up, but there are one or two in there. And I think it'd be really helpful to try and keep them focused and precise. The danger is you just only ever add stuff to things, and that doesn't actually help.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a bit wordy in places. So.
Yeah, Councillor Nick, it's absolutely spot on what you're saying there, because what we don't want is the old risk register coming back where we have constant stuff added and added and added. We just need to make sure these are just focused in a bit more. I think authors have done a really good job at this in this instance, just to try and make sure you've got everything on the table this time around. But actually, you're absolutely right. We can't keep adding to it. We've got to just tighten it up. And actually, that status column as well. I don't want it to go over 2 pages because we've got a narrow column anyway. So that in itself will make people have to focus on less words and a bit more succinct sort of descriptions of things. So that's a good point.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you very much, Dave. So that's first one done. So the second assurance area is ensuring we address affordable housing supply and demand to meet local need. And this is presented by Karen Sinclair, who's the Group Head of Community Wellbeing. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I just want to go back briefly on some of Lee's introduction, because as you're all aware, housing is a really high-profile area for the council and probably nationally as well at the moment for all sorts of reasons. So I think it's particularly important that you have assurance that we as a housing team, and that's not just the housing options team, it also involves planning colleagues and those in environmental health and so on, have taken this new approach really seriously and on board with it. And I think that's the most important thing. So it's not another thing that we sign up to and then ignore until the next time we're pushed for it. So all of the housing managers have had training on the new approach to risk assurance commitment, and then it will be inbuilt to we have monthly what they call continuous performance management meetings with managers, so documented updates going through the processes so that we continually monitor that kind of assurance even down to that level. So what I'm going to do is just cover a few of the areas, because as you can imagine, ensuring that we address affordable housing supply is an absolute huge issue, but it is integral to everything that we're doing in the housing options team in particular. Some of you in this room in particular will be aware of the improvement and recovery plan relating to commercial and housing, and some of the particular targets around reducing the numbers of people in nightly paid accommodation and temporary accommodation. So within the housing delivery plan that we have here, the assurance register, that is one of our key areas of focus, that we are monitoring those numbers, monitoring the costs, setting targets which are contained within the IRP, Improvement and Recovery Plan, and committed and bought into those as well, because it's really important for all sorts of reasons, as you can imagine. There's a financial incentive without doubt, but there's also the issue around the welfare of the homeless households who, it could be, as we've said before, as I've said many times, it could be any of us only a step or two away from that situation. and through often no fault, and I appreciate that the renters' right is changing some of the focus of how this works, but many people have seen themselves homeless after many, many years in the private rented sector, particularly for no fault of their own, other than the landlord would like the property back. And then, you know, they may have employment locally, they have caring responsibilities, families, children trying to do exams and so on. So the last thing we want as well is people placed in accommodation that isn't suitable and staying there too long at cost. So I think it's really important that that's a particular area of focus for us. And similarly, to making sure, one of the key assurance areas is having professional and timely advice to people. So it's about trying to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. Some of you will be aware, I think it's addressed elsewhere in Kirsty's report later, but the MHCLG did a deep dive into our homelessness service, and they looked at all of the ways that we have that provision. And they were particularly pleased. I'm not going to present the whole report tonight or anything, but they were particularly pleased about our customer focus, the way that we were dealing with it, really looking at innovative ways to do that. But they did point out some key areas of concern, which is about over-reliance on nightly paid accommodation, which is focused in here. But going back to that professional and timely advice, it's helping people as much as possible to stay in the accommodation that they have. And I appreciate that that isn't always, you know, a great situation, but unfortunately the alternative is, you know, nightly paid accommodation. And I know there's been reference to the Premier Inn. We quite often have to place in places such as Travel Lodge and so on, you know, all sorts of different accommodation. It might not be near children's schools, it might not be near GPs' practices, and there are issues around people not having, for example, cooking facilities, sharing, you know, toilets and so on, bathrooms and so on. So I think that's particularly important that we understand that this is one of the areas in here that we have to focus on and are doing so. And the other thing I would say is there's a key area about identifying and increasing affordable housing supply overall. So homelessness, the housing options team are, if you like, one end of the process. We're the customer in some ways. So what we've been talking about recently is the housing delivery group, which Dave, sorry to put Dave on the spot, but Dave and others are going to be leading on. And that's okay. We've got the local plan agreed. We've got some sites that, you know, might be opportunistic. How are we actually going to deliver and facilitate the provision of, you know, those affordable homes that we're talking about actually being delivered? Because those of you that have heard me speak before will have heard me say many, many times that over a 5-year period, many years we had zero new affordable rented homes provided. So therefore, we have a real crisis locally about what we do when people need accommodation. And I think over the 5 years, we got 23 new affordable rented properties provided. Of a housing waiting list of 2,500, you know, high numbers of homeless, that is not enough. So for me, it's absolutely critical that this housing delivery group does help to deliver, but I think it's also important to recognise that we can only do that with partners, given the council's financial situation, and that means involving with registered providers such as A2, such as others, about what they can help provide and what we can do to work with them. If it's okay, I'm going to stop there, just picking out a couple, and then if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Karen, for that. Yeah, Councillor Neil.
Thanks. You kind of answered my question, or the question I was going to ask, in referencing the central government report. But so I'll change it slightly. I was quite surprised when we had one of our recent audit report updates that homelessness was dropped from the audit. Reason being staff, not enough staff or something. Yeah. So my question was just to say, did you have any trouble reaching the green rating covering homelessness, given that it's not been included in the audit?
Homelessness in terms of professional advice and so on?
I don't want to get into specifics. I know nothing about
Yeah,
houses
yeah.
and how the housing department works. But you know, I'm looking for I'm looking to understand, you know, how you reach a green status. You know, how do you reach the conclusion that you're satisfied that you know we have all the appropriate arrangements and risk management in place. So the fact that that area is not being audited, I would imagine, would be a bit of a gap in terms of where you get the assurance from.
Okay, I mean...
Actually, Karen, I think Terry just wanted to come in before you.
Yes, just an update. Because whilst you're correct that in terms of last year's plan, there was a deferral. It is worth bearing in mind that in the next 2 quarters we have got coming up an audit on temporary accommodation, and we have got one on supported housing coming up very shortly. So there's 2 audits in the current this year's plan. So it's not quite correct to say there's nothing in the audit plan, internal audit plan around housing, because you're absolutely right. That is an important means of assurance in terms of the governance arrangements, and therefore we would be looking. There were issues in the past which Karen can, well, when we had a gap following the departure of actually 2 strategic leads, and that created a specific practical issue in terms of engaging at that point in time, but we've addressed that.
And I think also because of the understandable high focus on this area with the commissioners as well, and the Improvement and Recovery Board, we have been able to secure some additional resources within the homelessness team. So we had the MHCLG report, which we have shared with members. We can share it. The plan is to share it with all members, but it's, you know, it's not a hidden document or anything, so we could share that. So that gave us a certain degree of assurance. But we're also, as part of the action plan, involving others, private organisations, to help give us advice, for example, about how we can better use the private rented sector, different, more innovative ways of doing that, particularly in light of local government reorganisation, to make sure we have sustainable models going forwards. Is what we're doing the right way? Are we able to use the private, for example, is there more opportunities to place families who haven't got local connections, for example, schools, health and so on? Could we perhaps place some of those a little bit further afield in more less expensive properties? So we are getting help on that side of things as well. But I think because there's such a huge focus now on this area, and we have had more resources in, more monitoring, I think that's why we're positive. It's a green area at the moment, but will need to be carefully monitored.
Yeah, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware of the IRP focus on the line reducing temporary accommodation costs, and I know the plan. I'm aware of what the plan says, and clearly it's a necessary and potentially very productive area. However, this assurance line speaks solely about how to save money. Where do we get the assurance that we are going to be dealing correctly with the homeless? I hope that's not an unfair question.
I don't think it's unfair either, and I have to say that I think it's as Lee said, it's a learning process for all of us. So I don't know, Lee, but I'm sure it's something that we can expand on that, because I agree. When I have reread that, I felt myself that the assurance was a bit on the financial side only, rather than some of the other elements. So apologies, but I think we can enhance that, can we? You know.
I think if we would, for example, if we had the traditional risk register, you know, there'd be a risk about, you know, we have to deal with temporary accommodation. There's a risk that we leave people behind, you know, because of the financial pressures. We're not doing what we should be doing, and I think that's where this more rounded assurance sort of description would be useful. But it's a good point to pick up.
If I may, Chair, I could quite see it occurring in one of the other assurance statements. It doesn't have to be in this one.
Terry, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. No, I agree with both my colleagues' comments, and it's an important point. And as Lee says, there are potentially poor outcomes for households, particularly families with children and vulnerable and individuals being placed in nightly paid accommodation compared to more stable and settled accommodation. So you are right, we need to be aware of those other and draw out a little bit more maybe in the narrative those non-financial aspects as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Philip was next, and then Councillor Bortflower.
Thanks, and thanks, Karen. I'm just, again, more general reflections on the process rather than any sort of critique of the particular content, and bringing Dave's back in again. Sorry, I thought you thought you got away with it. But what's interesting just now reflecting on the two together is what I would observe that I like about the second one is the fact that all the descriptions begin with ensuring, or more or less. It makes me feel that actually there is a focus on the risks, because the reverse of all of those statements is ensuring the council maintains effective housing. The risk is that you don't maintain effective. So in each case, you're sort of mitigating a risk by making that statement, and then you provide sort of purpose and description of it. What I get more of from Dave's, and what I'm in the status, I don't get much sense of what you're actually doing. It's sort of light on the detail of the specific actions, and the whereas on the economy one, we've got much more detail about what's being done. Having said that, I think as an audit committee and assurance committee, probably the latter is what we want. So for Karen, with this one, I get assurance that you know what you're doing. Dave, on your one, I get assurance of what you are doing. That doesn't mean I'm not saying you don't know what you're doing, and also you have a much more difficult, to be honest, risk area to manage, whereas the housing does sort of lend itself to more direct assurance, I think. So again, just observations.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Philip. And committee must remember that as an audit committee, we're sort of focusing on the arrangements in place, and these in individual areas will go to the relevant service committee, where they will be looked at in sort of greater detail and more focus on the outcomes, where, you know, whereas we're sort of more on the assurance and the arrangement side of things. Thank you. Yeah, Dave,
just very briefly to come back. I think the difference in the two areas to some extent is explained by the fact that economic development is a discretionary activity for local authorities, whereas housing is a statutory one, where we are more in the doing, whereas in economic development we're more in the facilitative mode of working with and through others. Thanks.
Thank you. Good point, David. Yeah, Councillor Bortflower.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen, for the report. As ever, incredible department, incredible team. Always grateful for the hard work you do for our residents. Lee will probably close his ears on this one, because I finally got it into the risk register, is the breakdown. And it's not a breakdown of how many people, the different types on the housing list. The big numbers used in certain places for certain reasons. And then there's those that are the ones that need rehousing rather than more. I wonder if that could just be added at the top as sort of an information thing. If you read this report, we got 439 homeless.
That's it.
What's been the total on the list? Is there different categories? There needs to be some more info. That's my first question.
Okay, Terry or Lee or whoever first.
I'm going to say the same thing, aren't we?
So, very valid questions, but I think some of that detail is probably more for the Community Wellbeing and Housing Committee in terms of actual numbers. But as the Chair just said, in terms of seeking assurance, in terms of actually how we're managing addressing the needs of different categories within the register, that's that in terms of arrangements and the process around reviewing the tenancy allocations policy and the fact that we go through an extensive consultation process on a regular basis, that I think is more in terms of the focus of this committee, whereas the numbers, and you're right, they will, as we've discussed before, they will continuously change, and that I think is probably something for the Community Wellbeing Housing Committee to focus on and make sure that it's got the confidence in terms of how we're keeping on top of those numbers. It's just, I think it's returning to the Chair's point earlier. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, carry on. Thank you, Terry, for that. I disagree. They should be on there. As any member should pick up a report and be able to diagnose it without making a phone call looking at another report. It's very important stuff. The housing, in my mind, is one of the biggest portfolios this council deals with. I wonder, the second sort of question leading on of the risk or not risk is that we're into LGR now. They got their full council meeting Thursday. They're live as a shadow authority. If we do not work closely in that new, and I know everyone's going to chew me over, but there's the opportunity for using other accommodation, which I'm sure you've thought about already. But for Spelthorne residents, because we're still here for a bit longer, is that would that relieve the risk by using other places at certain pinch points? Where if that person, you know, if you said to me, John, you're homeless, we've got something just across the bridge, over the bridge, it's in Runnymede, it's not too far, I've got no dependents to get to school or anything like that, would that help? And it helps Runnymede. I would love to see some actions in there that this is taking place, because it's a cabinet system in the new unitary, which is very different to a committee system. It hasn't got the transparency, and I'm not saying it's not transparent, but it hasn't got the transparency we've got in the committee system. So I'd love to see, is a plan to put some entry in here of that assurance that all the pre-work is done to ensure when it's switched over, there's not a committee meeting to talk about it, but rather a committee meeting to action it. Thank you.
So it may well be that I should be aware of other processes. For example, I know there's a whole load of work streams on the local government organisation, but what I can assure you specifically on housing, and others I'll hopefully will jump in if there is different work streams, and I don't know if it's covered on here, sorry if I should know. But what I will say is yes, in answer to your question, there will be opportunities, and one of the reasons is that we don't have what's called a housing revenue account, because we basically don't have our own housing stock. I always kind of phrase it in the sense of that if we have complex clients, which we often do, so drug, alcohol, addiction type issues, probation, arsonists, etc., 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 because we are completely reliant on our biggest providers, which is A2, and a very small number of others, very small. If they say no to any clients, we have a statutory responsibility. I always say we have no plan B. There is no plan B. And I think it's important that it's recognised that Spelthorne is very unique like that compared to particularly going into the West, because I think most of them have their own housing revenue account. So, in other words, their own housing stock, Woking, Runnymede and others. So I think it will be really positive in that sense. So that is being looked at. And obviously there's the whole future of the cage stock as to where that sits. And it will most probably be part of the wider housing revenue account stock across West Surrey. So I think it is really positive. It is definitely being thought of, and how, but the actual nuts and bolts of how that all happens, like all of the service areas, is yet to be teased out. Is that what you would have said, Lee and Terry?
I think, Terry, if I can just add to that, that's why I'd love to see it as a thing to be assured. So we are assured in Spelthorne the day of the switchover that something's there. At the moment, I've got no assurance whatsoever. I accept what Karen says. I don't disbelieve Karen. But I've got no assurance here. And unless you're watching this committee meeting, the public have got no assurance from these documents. So could we, Chair, please add that as an entry to keep track of it, to keep it on the radar screen? It's so important. People that do not have somewhere to live need the services. And as Karen says, we are very unique. I knew that when I asked the question. We haven't got an RP, but others have. And I think to safeguard our residents, it's important to put on there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Terry.
Yeah, and again, it's a good, important points being raised, and thank you, Councillor Portflower. And Karen's highlighted one, flexibility in terms of moving towards a single, quite a large housing revenue account, and that will give some additional flexibilities. You also mentioned in terms of day one, so there is a lot of work involving all the 6 districts and boroughs and county colleagues on the housing work streams and across all the service work streams. And the first priority is to ensure that on day one, we're delivering services on a safe and legal basis, and then it will take some time to actually then transform over time and fully realise the potential. But we have to first of all make sure that we are safe and legal, and so we have to prioritise. But absolutely, and the thinking is beginning to develop in terms of actually how do we move beyond our current district and borough policies, and there will be a lot of work because there will be some significant choices and decisions, political choices and decisions, which will need to be made by West Surrey as a whole. So that will take time, but you're right, that is the direction that it will move in.
Okay, thank you. Just very briefly, Karen, because this is just the second one out of 6, so we do need to move on to the others. Yeah, so Councillor Hawkins.
Hi. You know, I emailed you this morning actually virtually what John said. And I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but I can't get my head around it. It says it's green and that you've got, it's the only green one within your thing, that you've got, it almost reads like you're happy that there's 439 people, or is it that they're being managed correctly and it's costing 2 million, or what? To me, that would be read that you're disappointed that you've got 439 people. Is that 439 people that you're accommodating every night in hotels across Spelthorne, or what?
No, it's what we call the cases that we got. I think the assurance is around the fact that we are dealing with them as effectively as we could. So at each stage, for example, there's what we call a triage stage, a bit like you have in accident and emergency, about, you know, assessing what their immediate needs are, what the advice should be. So there's that stage, there's a prevention stage, and then there's legal stages called relief and duty and so on. So basically what we're saying is we are not keeping people in each stage longer than necessary. We are triaging effectively. So if you all probably know that we've had a number of clients turn up in reception, you know, having got off a plane from certain places, with children in tow. We've had queries about whether the people are there are actually the parents of the said children, and so on and so forth. So the kind of thing we do is very quick, speedy, establish the facts as far as we are able, liaise with other partner agencies, and if we consider that we have no duty to even give immediate assistance to those people, we do not. So what our assurance is that each and every stage we have effective processes in to be able to say, okay, right, here's the filter, if you feel like a monopoly board, you go to the next stage, you don't pass go type thing. I know that sounds a little bit crude, but it's really that's how we're looking at it, so that we are not you know, there are issues once we accept people in terms of how long some of them are staying in temporary accommodation, because we have so few options. But in terms of the processes as to each stage of that, we have confidence that we're doing it effectively as endorsed by MHCLG and their report.
So how many people sort of, I mean, you know, it comes out 2.3 million. How many people are in this situation of a night on average then?
In nightly paid accommodation at the moment we have 78 households, but that's as a result of our action plan. We had around 100 in January, so we're already making inroads into that. So overnight 78 households, but there's also this is current figures, 127 households in what we call temporary accommodation as well. So that's not their permanent accommodation, but it's more, so it's not, for example, travel lodge or a bed and breakfast up the road. It's more secure, but it's still not their permanent accommodation, to give you a feel for those figures.
So would it be somebody, I don't know, somebody that's so overcrowded in accommodation and that, you know, looking for something bigger and that they're just in that temporary and that, the second category?
What, the temporary accommodation?
Yeah.
No, so we have to assess whether they are what we call homeless and in priority need and have a local connection and are not intentionally homeless. There's a whole load of steps that we have to do before we accept that we have a duty towards people. But take it from me, we really don't take that lightly. If you hear the staff in reception, you will hear them saying, how can you prove to me you've been chucked out of your accommodation today? Where's all your belongings? They are really rigorous.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Actually, I think we're veering off the arrangements here and going into details. I think.
I'll just add one thing. Absolutely, the chair's right. I think we're going into the detail, which obviously is something for the Community Wellbeing and Housing Committee. And actually, one of the KPIs, which are the revised sort of KPIs that will be reported to them, is going to be about total number of households and nightly paid accommodation. So that performance and how that tracks over the year will be reported to that committee through that KPI. So that's the sort of where the data goes in terms of the performance rather than to here.
can we have further details of this associated with this? Because I'm not on community wellbeing and housing. I don't know what has happened.
Well, I think you would need to speak to somebody in your group who is on community wellbeing and housing, and you know, get any questions to. Don't look at me. To ask the questions here. I don't think they're relevant here because, as I said earlier, we're here to look at the arrangements, not the detail. You know, and then this will be coming to this community wellbeing and housing committee at a future meeting, and those questions would absolutely be relevant there, but not here.
Chair, if I may, just a suggestion, and I'm not trying to delay time because it's getting late anyway, is I wonder if all the committees, I'm sure you have a process map roughly of what happens for the members of the committee, because if you are not on that committee, I do get it, and you've not been here for a long time, that it can be hard to understand. I will ask all the committees I'm on if there is a process map or a simplified one of person comes in, the counter staff are excellent, if they pass go, this happens, if they don't, then it stops. Something simple, I think, for members would be good, a nice simple flow chart. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Right, so we need to leave that there. Karen, thank you very much for your report. And so we'll move on to the third one, which is ensuring that the Council has robust mechanisms in place to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies and business interruptions. Sandy Muirhead, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this is really about managing risk for us and ensuring that we can manage that, our responsibilities in an emergency, particularly under the Civil Contingencies Act. For those of you that are not aware, our contractor Applied Resilience does a lot of the work for us and is involved with 8 authorities across Surrey. Obviously, there will be changes with LGR, but at the moment, we don't know what those are. So just to sort of provide some assurance, we first of all need to make sure we have a corporate resilience plan, our emergency plan in place. So if there is an emergency, there are clear procedures on how we should act. And that plan is reviewed on an annual basis. In fact, it's just been reviewed, and I will be taking a report in due course to Environment and Sustainability Committee on our updated plan. So that is a really important guide to how we act. There's 2 parts to it. There's the policy, which fits with what we have to do statutorily, and then there's the operational bit about how we will deal with an emergency. And for some of you that will remember, that can be quite all-consuming. I'll come on to that. To help back that up, within services, we have to have business continuity plans. Those are also reviewed on a rolling basis to ensure we can deal with anything. You know, it might be this building sadly burning down, or it might be that there's an outage, can even be an internet outage, all those sorts of things we need to be able to deal with. We also have some specific plans, and some of those are specific to us, But a very key one for us, of course, is a multi-agency flood plan. That doesn't just involve us, that involves all our partners. And I have to say, I would stress that in any big emergency, we work in partnership with the other blue light organisations, and that can also be with utilities as well. So we have specific plans for those. There is a strategic gold, a tactical silver and a bronze operational level responses, and we have clear procedures of those, including an incident management team, which comprises predominantly of the senior management team and usually myself as the interface with the action going on the ground. It's very important, and we do this even when we're testing plans, that the lessons learnt are taken on board. For those that recall the 2014 floods, there was lots of lessons learned there. And even from Storm Henk in 24, with Surrey County Council as the lead local resilience, lead local flood authority, lessons learnt were put together there under section 19s. Training is really important, and also making sure that staff are aware. So on April the 15th, there was a 15-minute presentation just to make sure all staff are aware of emergencies and what happens, and emergency plans and business continuity. But we also need to ensure members are aware as well, and I did discuss with the leader on this and equality and diversity about perhaps following up on that aspect of member training following the elections. Staff are regularly undertake exercises. Karen's team in particular are involved in rest centre exercises because if there is an emergency, we decant staff to there. So I hope that covers the key points, and I'm happy to answer any questions. As to working with Surrey's Local Resilience Forum going forward, we are debating about how that fits under local government reorganisation. The chair of the SLRF currently is with the Fire and Rescue Service, and there is a general consensus, I think, that we'd like to keep that organisation across Surrey because we have to work with those partners in an emergency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sandy. Councillor Bortflower.
Thank you, Sandy. Fantastic. I know many a time the Greeno's been open and Karen's there and you're down there, and I think it's something we do which we're second to none. We really are brilliant. When there's an emergency, we really pull the stops out. So I'm not surprised it's green. And I think everybody's got assurance from the events that happen in reality, unfortunately. And I'm pleased to see the training continuing. I know you've got the bigger network as well with Surrey and the outside partners. And I think you've got it nailed. So I've got total assurance of this. And it also involves the other departments, such as Karen's department and others. Jackie, I can't speak without saying Jackie. And I think everything bonds together brilliantly. And for this committee, and I'm sure the committees that it touches, which is many, that everyone would find the same assurance. I'm grateful for all you do. So excellent work, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bortflower. I echo those comments. Yeah. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you. Sandy, it seems to me that potentially quite a lot of this is going to be affected by LGR, but LGR doesn't feature in your descriptions significantly. I'm wondering whether it deserves, for this particular area, its own category. Because, you know, if you're going to turn your IT upside down, your whole disaster recovery plan changes. But some of this doesn't. You know, the flood risk, in a sense, you're going to hold on till the last minute up to a point, aren't you? Because you're not going to give it away to someone who doesn't have a river. So I just wonder whether LGR has a uniquely difficult problem for you. Sorry.
No, thank you. It does. I mean, we're kind of feeling our way with that a bit at the moment. There is a work stream on emergency planning. They've done the initial sort of as-is assessment. I think it's because of the way the SLRF works and that bigger, wider partnership, I think it's taking a little bit longer to unpick how it can best work with West Surrey and East Surrey. And I'm sort of waiting to hear that, but I'm happy to include something.
That's brilliant. This. Put it in a line on this, that's all I'm saying.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, Terry.
Yes, well-made point, and I was at a briefing by legal colleagues yesterday talking about some of the legal framework under which the LGR process is working or moving forwards. And one of the points they made in terms of emergency planning is that the unitaries on day one are unsurprisingly required to have appropriate emergency plans in place, because you never know, on day one you could have an emergency. So there is a requirement for the shadow authorities to be pulling together appropriate plans. So that is a particular risk which is being addressed, as Sandy says, through the work streams.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Councillor Hawkins.
Quick one. Moving forward, the River Thames scheme, how's that coming together and how will that be affected going forward to unitary, please?
Actually, again, that isn't sort of the arrangements. You're asking about a scheme that is not to do with arrangements. So I wonder again if that's more relevant in, presumably that would be environment and sustainability. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any more? Or, oh, yep, quickly, Councillor Neil.
Yep. I was just going to ask, the one thing that stood out to me was the lesson learned log. And one of the things that was put to us as an example of sort of the difference that the new governance regime might bring in is to move away from a culture of sort of pulling logs and registers off from the top shelf, blowing the dust away, filling them out once a year and putting them back up there. The implication being that it's a bit of a tick box exercise, really. And, you know, so I wondered if you could sort of elaborate a little bit on to what extent the lesson learned log is referred to and referenced and used as a basis for some of the other work in the other areas, really.
Thank you. Depends on the lessons learned. I mean, from flood risk, that fine-tunes the multi-agency plan and might bring in more things that we have to do or things we have to take account of. I think in the training sessions, I was involved in one on reservoir planning not that long ago, last year, and the lessons learned from that exercise will feed into the revised reservoir emergency planning document. That is sort of pulled together by the Environment Agency and Thames Water predominantly, but they use the lessons from that exercise to feed into the plans, to improve the plans and make sure that they're covering all aspects. And, you know, every organisation in an emergency will also take its own lessons back into the organisation, whether that be the police, the ambulance service, fire and rescue, etc.
And I'm pleased to hear that's being done. I don't know the format of the log. I mean, are the examples you've been given, is that just direct feedback from individual to individual? Or are they sort of going via the log and being recorded and that kind of?
There is always very careful recording associated with any emergencies because of potential inquiries. Yeah. So they're always very, very careful. And particularly after the Manchester bombing, there was a lot came out from there that had to be built into the processes around what we do in emergencies.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, Sandy, for the emergencies and business interruptions. Now we'll move on to your second area of assurance area, which is ensuring we meet our equality, diversity and inclusivity duties and responsibilities.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have a duty to do it to the Equality Act, and I'll be honest, we had an audit last year and we have enacted quite a lot of that into our policies and also into the equality and diversity strategy, which we now have in place. It is, as the Chair knows, quite short deliberately because we know that come probably not so far in the future, the local government organisation, with the local government reorganisation, this will be an area that the shadow authority have to consider in their corporate activities. So we have done that part of it. We feel training is very important, and that is undertaken by some mandatory training on our work rights system, and that has to be completed every year. So we are doing that. We also try and make sure that all services, where appropriate in development of a strategy or a project, undertake an equality diversity impact assessment to make sure that in what we're doing, we recognise that there are things we may have to do under the Equality Act as our public sector duty. So we need to make sure that's in. We do have resource issues in terms of trying to keep our little inclusivity group, if I can call it that, going. And that Champions EDI network it's maintained by staff, but I think, to be fair, we are very good at, across the board, the organisation does take account, I think, quite successfully of equality, diversity and inclusivity issues. We do therefore make sure that we have the policy, and we do report the KPIs via the gender pay gap statistics, and also the percentage of staff that have completed their work right training. And we will be reporting on those. The gender pay gap analysis is annual, but we can report quarterly on the completion of EDI mandatory training. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions on this? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, having been through a lot of EDI training with an employer, there's a massive difference between the depth and, to my experience, the seriousness with which they take this matter compared to what we have received as members in the council. And sometimes that gets reflected by what people say in council meetings, frankly. And I just wonder what sort of benchmarking we do against other industry standards to make sure that our EDI training in particular is as effective and enforced as much as would be best practice.
Thank you. I think for staff, we comply well with others. For members, absolutely, which was why I raised it a little while ago with the leader about could we do some further training for members. I think there was some done when you were first elected, but of course that's quite a while ago. But she wished to wait till after the elections, so I will talk to committee services and our HR team to see if we can find a good trainer. We do have someone in mind, but whether they'd be willing to come here and do that of an evening, we need to reassess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Harkins.
You're probably going to tell me it's the wrong question to ask, but hell, I'll ask it. With regards to the equality and diversity, how do we get on with the likes of the immigrants in the hotel and the likes of the travellers and showmen that are around? Because I know there's a lot of, I don't know if there's a way we can turn around and get people more acceptance of them, more accepting of them.
That, yeah, I mean, we are talking about internally, and I think the services are pretty accepting of them. Jackie, as you know, deals with them on a fairly regular basis. I appreciate that, but we are focusing here very much on meeting our public sector duty rather than the wider residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you. There's no more on that one, so thank you, Sandy. So on to the fifth one. Ensuring the council's financial management and long-term planning arrangements are effective to secure financial sustainability. So Altin is presenting this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this area of the assurance covers all that needs to be in place for finance to discharge its duties as support function. It goes through financial procedures and policies, financial regulations, alignment against SIPFA management code, looks into budget setting, monitoring, reporting, and member scrutiny, capital strategy, and improving the robustness of the statement of accounts. So if we take them one by one in terms of procedures and policies and financial regulations, there have been updates to those areas in April around different areas in terms of ledger, scrutiny, separation of duty. There will be a need for them to be reviewed again as part of the LGR, and then they will be superseded by the West Surrey policies and procedures. In terms of the medium-term financial statements strategy, Council approved the MTFS has been a revised position of reserves because of the latest outturn position for 25-26, and that's included in the report. But the robustness of the MTFS depends heavily on the capital receipts. It currently has a target of 170 million to be realized, and that will impact the level of reserves if those capital receipts are not realized. In terms of budget setting, monetary reporting, and member scrutiny, a lot of work has happened in the background. 26-27 budget has been approved. The new monitoring approach is being implemented as we speak. There is one more session of training of budget holders, and the month 2 forecast cycle kicks in this Friday with 3 weeks window to do the forecast. It's important to emphasize that we have completed the outturn report and shared with members, and we've had positive feedback so far, which is one of the milestones that feeds into this. Looking back into the capital strategy and program, it's green because the restructure of loans and everything was done last November, and calculations that are linked with it have been agreed. In terms of finance team capacity and skills, I'll start by saying that finance delivered the year-end process within 13 working days after the close of financial years. I am part of the LGR group, and the feedback I have from other authorities part of the LGR is they're still going through the outturn process. So as we speak, we have at least reached one of the key milestones. But nevertheless, in saying that there are vacancies in the team, which we're recruiting to, and the team is going through training and as well audit preparedness. But I would say a lot of hard work was put in by finance and budget holders to deliver that outturn report on time. In terms of aligning against SIPFA financial management compliance, a lot of work will be done, but they will be informed by the 25-26 statement of accounts, auditors' feedback in terms of what they give us for 25-26, although we've been dealing with prior year recommendations. This work is likely to reach into autumn because it's literally, it's quite a lengthy piece of work and as well needs to align with LGR. So finance overall as a support function has not only discharge of duties whilst we're still in Speltham, but as well to align with LGR across of a number of areas, from systems, from financial regulations, procedures, and we are working very close with them. I will stop here and happy to address any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Alton. Any questions? Councillor Bortfly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alton, for your report. And I can understand the amber because we're going into something, LGR, and you don't know if we're a square peg in a round hole and how it's properly going to fit. You know it's got to go in somewhere, but the exact measurements and dimensions we're not sure of. So you're doing a great job. I still got problems because of the statement of accounts and things like that, but that's not for here. But I think for where you're going, and I think you can see the factor there of the amber, which it is, and I'm sure over time, once the new West Surrey gets its feet under the table, and hopefully extremely fast, as it should do, it's been a year to prepare, that they turn slowly. By the end of the story, they all go green, and I think that's what the intentions are. I would be very surprised, and I'd hope there wouldn't be any ambers at our last meeting, but I accept that it's a risky time. It's uncharted territory, so I'm grateful that you're on the LGR and in front on that score, and I'm sure everybody's got slightly a different system of technology and other things, best practice and things like that, which hopefully will settle down in the first couple of months. and then be able to switch our things into a better state. So thank you for the hard work. Appreciate the amber stuff, because if it was green, I'd be thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? So I like that. Thank you for all the stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
I'm going to stray very, very slightly into the detail beyond this committee, but I think something, Alton, I do worry about this capacity and expertise. There's nothing in here about the additional requirements for starting up new ledgers in West Surrey and loading Spelthorpe's data. It seems to me there's going to be a whole load more work, and I think that probably should be commented on when it goes to CPRC.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Philip.
Thanks, Alton. One of the from the time I've been on the audit committee, one of the sort of themes of concerns around the finance function has been, I suppose, a more general concern about the quality and the reliability of information, financial information and timeliness that was going to committees, to decision-making bodies to allow the thing to function. I'm taking a general view from what I'm hearing here and other things I've heard that is definitely being improved on, and my sense is that's very much improving with improved resources and certainly what we hear from the audit committee. But there's not a specific, I suppose, is there anything more specific in terms of a control environment or potentially a KPI? I mean, maybe the KPI is what you're told by the councillors who have to use the information, and in the absence of hearing criticisms, I'm assuming that's okay. But any observations on that, please?
Yeah, I think Terry would like to answer that one.
Well, and obviously Alton's welcome to add. But yeah, so yeah, good question, and you're absolutely right. That's been a key area of focus, and we've been on a journey. And one of the reasons we recruited Alton is actually we've been aware of his track record. We had confidence that he could help the team and us do better in terms of reliable, clear and timely reporting. And one of the major focuses, as he's touched on, is putting in place a new approach to generation of the financial monitoring reports, a systems-based approach, additional training for the budget holders, and there will be metrics, because this also overlaps with the Improvement Recovery Board and focus on the finance stream, and there will be metrics in terms of measuring the impact, and that includes metrics around timeliness and not issuing revisions to reports, which sort of links to accuracy. So there is a very clear focus, but as Alton says, demonstrating the outcome of that will become clearer once we effectively launch that new approach with period 2, which is happening very, very shortly. And then when that first report goes to Corporate Policy and Resources, I think in July, and we'll be looking for feedback from councillors in terms of is the report clear, in similar way to what Alton's referred to in terms of what he's done with regard to the outturn report, where we did seek soundings from councillors before the actual final version was issued. So but those are just my observations, but Alton's obviously may want to add to that.
So our focus has been mainly on what you explained to improve at least the data quality and as well interpretation of the data. And it has translated into shorter times into delivering things, and as well the outturn report proved that sort of approach. Now, some of these KPIs that are under our control in terms of budget monitoring are going to turn green after month 2, because we'll have the evidence, or probably we'll turn the other way around if we'll show. But so far, we've met every single deadline in terms of, since we did the MTFS, the outturn report, and the feedback has been more or less positive. Of course, there is more to improve. A lot of training is going into the finance team, because we are hoping that we will cut manual processing significantly to allow time for budget holders to focus on other things that add value and finance as well, to spend time of kind of keeping up to date and understand the business more rather than chasing small things here and there about data quality or miscodings or other bits. As any other organization, you can do as much. There will always be issues, but at least we have reports that provided trigger-based information to show if something doesn't make sense. And as Terry mentioned, the Improved Recovery Board has got all these assurances assigned to KPIs in terms of progress, everything, engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good.
I suppose myself and the chair are in a bit of a unique position, being on the board, and I'm also on the finance board. So I'm really grateful for this where it is, and I won't repeat that. But as things progress on, and the IRB boards, be it whichever one you're on, and it will start to show and flourish, which is great. I probably have a little fear now for the new West Unitary, because I don't think they'll be able to produce the reports for their members as fast as you're going to set down. So I don't know if that's flagged as an issue to the new West Unitary to ensure that they understand how you're doing the magic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Councillor Hawkins.
I was just wondering, is there anything to expand on regarding the increase to 170 in the BP, 170 million in the BP situation?
The original target in the MTFS was 155 million. Then the 50 million is the slippage that we had, literally. But
Terry, yeah.
Again, we're sort of stepping into detail, and obviously there's some commercial aspects in terms of some aspects of that. But as you're aware, that we are we've commissioned some additional independent expert advice in terms of options with regard to BP. So we need to work through those, and of course that doesn't necessarily mean any transaction will happen in this current financial year, so it could well be an issue in terms of actually an outcome for West Surrey in 27-28 beyond. But that does link to the point Alton's already flagged in terms of one of the key reasons why the overall financial sustainability is amber is that dependency, as Alton has drawn out in terms of achieving the capital receipts, and BP could actually be an opportunity, but equally is possibly bringing forward one aspect of that program. It may or may not be. But I think we can't really go into the detail in this arena. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Right, so. Sorry, I didn't see you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Neil, microphone, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, John. So, yeah, with regard to the budget holder training financial competency framework, that all sounds great. It just strikes me that with, the local government form changes, and given the fact that council was struggling in the first place, I think with staffing levels and workloads and things like that, what contingencies do we have in place to ensure that this training actually takes place and that the staff actually have time to do it?
yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, we've had 3 sessions so far, each session about an hour, and I would say it's quite useful because we're changing the approach to allow managers to have more time in terms of doing the forecast, where previously it was mostly Excel based, and finance were kind of driving a lot, not because managers didn't do it, but because it was a different process. So now it's all going to be online, concentrated. Finance has to discharge a duty to provide the support there and then, and allow a lot of time for managers to move on and do other things rather than having to chase the forecast. So far, the attendance has been quite satisfactory. A lot of people attended and I found it very useful. A part of the training materials, we have done a short video as well to help them to navigate through quickly. But as I said earlier, the real test will be once we go through month 2 and see what complexity, what support is needed, and as well see the feedback from budget holders, and we'll adjust our approach. But in my calculations, I've done this in walk-in, the same approach. Ended up with managers gaining at least a week and a half on the time they spend on finance, because everything, walk-in was in a worse position originally. But manual cutting process in the sense of finance having to move away, budget holders moving away from the finance side and looking to the frontline services, key focus for us. But let's wait and see what feedback we get after month 2.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, just very briefly, I mean, Alton's covered it really well. So most of that training of the budget holders, as Alton says, has happened. I've attended 2 of those sessions, and they've been good sessions. And as Alton says, there's been good attendance. Alton's also been doing training of the finance team in terms of the business partners who are supporting the budget holders. So that's another strand. And I think there's one final session on Thursday, I believe. So we are on track to complete that stage of the training.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Nichols.
Chair, I can't resist. There are some budget holders here present. I wonder if they might have some feedback from them.
You'll probably take this the wrong way, but I am not very IT literate, etc., but I found the training really helpful, and Alton is genuinely brilliant, and he hasn't paid me.
Well, hope he will soon.
Yeah. Well, that's a ringing endorsement there, yes.
Yeah, just to mention that we are focusing as well on use of AI, Copilot, to help in terms of speeding up large volume of data, of course with human oversight, which is cutting a lot of manual work as well in finance. So that's another area that we focus in heavily.
Good to see a bit of innovation going on there, so yeah, thank you. Right. Okay, so thank you, Alton, for your report. Thank you. So the final area that we're looking at this evening is ensuring there are effective governance arrangements in place to deliver the IRP. So over to you, Linda, to present this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So first of all, I would like to begin by giving a brief overview of the governance arrangements that support the Improvement and Recovery Plan. The plan is a significant corporate programme for the Council, and it has its own governance framework, reporting arrangements, and oversight through committees, council, boards and sub-boards. The strategic focus on this area reflects the scale and complexity and the importance of the plan corporately and generally, and the need to ensure that the delivery is supported by accountability, effective and clear decision-making, performance monitoring, risk management, and transparent reporting. The key aspects of this particular governance assurance area have been identified by considering the main conditions needed for the delivery of the Improvement and Recovery Plan, and so that the plan is delivered effectively and sustainably. That included looking at the governance framework already in place and the expectations of members and the commissioners, and the controls that needed to be in place to ensure tracking, reporting, risk and budget monitoring, escalation and compliance. The overall assurance position has been assessed as amber because important governance arrangements are in place and are operating, but a number of them are not mature enough, and there isn't enough data to compile a convincing picture. And some of the actions haven't been tested and evidenced over time. So there is a sound framework in place, but maturity and consistency still is still needed so that a higher level of assurance can be given. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Linda. Councillor Botflower.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Linda, for that report, and absolutely understand the amber. It's a complicated field of activities, probably not where we'd like it to be at the moment, but I think there has been some progress in it, and it's moving on. So it's good to see the report reflect that. There's a few greens in there, but overall I think the amber's about right. I don't know if other members that are on it, what their views are, but I think it's quite a difficult set of tasks to be done. It's you know, there's a lot of expertise on it, a lot of outside expertise and influence, and also we've got the commissioners running it. It's the commissioners' board, with everyone chipping in and doing their bit. So I think as far as I see, my assurance of it's amber, I'm quite happy with that this time. Thank you. Thank you for the work on it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Portflower. Anyone else? Councillor Neil.
Yeah, the one that stood out for me was the maintain records and logs of escalation procedure instances. And it says ensure that there are arrangements in place to record where matters have been escalated, and there are none in circulation. So, well, that surprised me a little bit. So yeah, it does say it's going to be to be kept under review. I just wondered, could you give an example of something that might be escalated to senior management that might be recorded in one of these logs?
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Can I just point out that none in the circulation refers to the update dated 25th of March. There's a subsequent update dated 11th of May, which there's no instances of escalation to date. So at the time, then the first update was, because obviously this register had been prepared, well, obviously in March at some point, and it was updated with how things stood at that particular point in time. Things moved on since then, and the arrangements are in place. It's just there hasn't been any need to escalate anything, which I do think is a good thing. At a glance, I can't really immediately say what kind of matters would require management escalation, but I would have thought if there is a persistent missing of the deadlines, or something strategically important has been moved more than, let's say, twice, because obviously all the actions under the behind the improvement and recovery plan, there is an action log, an action tracker, and each action has a date, so a due date. And the idea being that the dates are not moved. There is, if the date is not met, then there is a narrative explaining why that is and what alternative date or a revised date might be. So I would have thought something like a couple of times, a couple of dates being missed, and which jeopardize strategic elements of the plan or the delivery, then that would be escalated. Yeah. But there might be others as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? We had an example earlier with Dave's presentation where I said, well, you know, how would we chase up people that didn't respond? And he said, well, I'll escalate it to Gordon. Now, Gordon phoning up one of our partners and saying, have a word, someone's forgotten to do this, is slightly different and perhaps less worthy of record, I don't know, than the example you've given where there would be, you know, serious repercussions, you know, operational repercussions, perhaps financial liabilities, perhaps legal repercussions. So yeah, I'm just curious to kind of get a sense of, you know, because operationally, go and speak to the chief exec, go and ask him, right? That seems like a normal thing to do. You don't have to write down every time you ask him a question. But I'm just interested to know what would sort of be serious enough to go on the log, and therefore that might inform future questions and future expectations of what we might want to see here. But thank you, that was a good example.
Okay, Terry, you just wanted to
just
come in.
to add, so I mean this assurance area is obviously related to the programme management and delivery of the improvement recovery plan. So it's obviously we need to consider it in that context, and and each of the themes or priorities has a senior responsible officer, and so part of their role is to make sure that they are ensuring that there are, as Linda says, appropriate risk registers and logs being maintained and identifying emergent issues. And for example, in the finance theme, as John is aware, we have a finance board, and that will review the risk register on a monthly basis. And the senior responsible officer in discussion with that board, if there are concerns about risks to delivering against the targets which have been set, then potentially that will then be escalated to the overall improvement recovery board, because it may be that additional resource needs to be identified and focused on a particular issue. So there are coming back to the point about this is about focusing on arrangements, that there is a set of governance arrangements in place to kick in if there's a need. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Councillor Hawkins.
Just two quick ones. This thing about reporting to Audit Committee and CP&R, saying that appropriate and timely reports received. Can we please make sure that we do turn around and adhere to that, and that we don't have the situation like we did with the accounts at the start of the year, that, you know, we are expected to sign off on something that we've not seen. Also, within the report, it talks about programme director. Who do they mean by the programme director, or do they mean project director? Because all the others have got names, while that one hasn't.
Thank you, Councillor Hackens. Starting with the first question, the report actually, well, the Improvement and Recovery Plan has specified a frequency of reporting, and I do believe that all reports actually are up to date, because we have delivered reports to Council and CPRC with the update, and audit report is due later in the summer, I believe. I think it's on the forward plan. But point noted, absolutely. And then another point to note as well, the committee is not asked to sign anything off. It's obviously there's a list of arrangements that we have in place to ensure that IRP is delivered safely and to time. So as such, there isn't a sign-off required, as it were. And then turning on to this second question, which I forgot, sorry, forgive me, please.
Programme director.
Programme director. That is, Neutrality have been appointed as programme director, and Nick Fell in particular is the lead contact. Thank you.
Can we stick his name in the same as all the other people's?
Oh, absolutely, of course, will do.
Yeah, Terry.
Yes, so adding to Linda's comments, so again, this focuses in terms of the improvement recovery delivery, and of course we have in place on the forward plan a schedule in terms of the reports to the Corporate Policy and Resources Committee, and we've delivered in terms of the recent update. But there's a short aside. In the moment, we've got next on the agenda the annual governance statement, which we've taken, and well, the credit's due to Kirsty in terms of making sure that we really focus in terms of getting an early draft, because we've still got the opportunity, if we needed to bring it back in June and still meet the deadline. And similarly, as we've discussed before, we've got a 2 months margin now in terms of when we expect the external auditors to report on their audit funds and statement accounts ahead of the national deadline. So we're not going to be really tight. So we have taken on board the feedback from this committee, and we are very focused on trying to build in that opportunity for time to have a measured scrutiny of key documents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there's no more questions for Linda. So I'm aware that with these 6 assurance areas, that there's been a lot to take in this evening, and it is we're sort of at the start of this process. So if you do have any more comments or thoughts on the sort of format of the reports, then, you know, do let me know or let Lee know, because it's still work in progress. I mean, I've got a couple of general things that I would say. I think it would be helpful in discussions if each row had a number that we could refer to easily, rather than having to look through all the text. And the other thing is the dates on there. I hate American format dates. If that's a simple IT thing that can be fixed, can that be done, please?
I will ask, because someone else made reference to that, but I think it's a hangover from Power BI, I think, but it's the way the American dates are put. Whether they can change that, I don't know, but we'll try. So,
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Nichols, sorry.
I think we've actually had a very interesting discussion of these 6 items. Admittedly, there's quite a lot of getting to know the thing. I do think it would be worth your while stressing to other committee chairs that this is a lengthy item. You're not going to do it justice, certainly at CPRC, unless you have at least the equivalent time. And we've spent nearly 2 hours on it, and we've been steered away from the detail. So I think, can we make sure that other chairs recognise the amount of time they're going to need to properly discuss this, or else it's a complete waste of time?
Yep, very good point. Yep. Yep. So if there's no more comments, so we've provided feedback on suggested improvements as we have considered each area, but does the committee agree to note the overall assurance level for the 12 governance assurance areas? Agree. Okay. 6. No, well,
I think it's it is, just to interrupt. Sorry, Chair. You've done 6. You've gone through in detail, but it's the actual Appendix A, which is the overall assessment for the 12. So that's what that refers to. So apologies.
Thank you, Lee. Right, so I propose that we take a 5-minute break there. That gives the chance for our colleagues to depart. Thank you very much for your time this evening. And so we'll reconvene in just after 9 o'clock, please. Thank you. Okay, right. Thank you, everybody. So we're back and we're on to item 5, the draft annual governance statement. So this item is for the committee to consider the draft annual governance statement that has been prepared in order to provide comments and updates ready for a revised draft to be considered at our next meeting. So this can be found on pages 11 to 48 of the main agenda. I'd like to thank Kirsty for her hard work in putting together this draft. So may I ask Kirsty to present the item, please?
Thank you to all members of the committee. I appreciate Councillor Bortflower has come to this process slightly later, so hasn't had the early sight that other members of the committee had. But the first thing to say is I wanted to thank everybody who has contributed their time and insight into this review. So that includes councillors, independent committee members and the senior management team. So everybody's input has been carefully considered and is reflected in the draft before you. Given the Council's current position as a local authority in intervention, it's particularly important that this document provides a clear, realistic and transparent assessment of our governance arrangements. It must demonstrate not only where improvements have been made, but also where weaknesses remain and how these are being addressed in a robust and credible way. The committee has previously expressed a strong desire to be involved in shaping key documents prior to finalisation, as was mentioned in the last item. In that spirit, an earlier draft was shared for initial comment, and this draft that you see before you is presented at this stage to enable your scrutiny and input, ensuring that it accurately reflects both the scale of the challenge, but also the progress that has been made. So this does remain a working draft, so you will spot that there are areas that are still to be completed or updated. So for example, there's some document review dates that remain blank. But most importantly, the section on external assurance remains. Given the significance of the external oversight in the context of intervention, this section will be critical in evidencing independent challenge and support. So it's the next piece of work that I'm focused on. It will be circulated separately to members of the committee as soon as it's drafted and available for review. And I'd appreciate your comments if there are things that need to be amended before then it's incorporated into the final version. So I'm hoping that that will be ready sort of within a week or so. But again, thank you very much. It is a draft in front of you. I will answer any questions, but please understand with my dual hat of taking notes, I will be frantically typing away at the same time. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Kirsty. No, I have to say, I'm certainly impressed with this document. I think it's a step forward on the previous year's version. So thank you very much for that. So does any of the committee have any questions or comments they wish to make? Councillor Hawkins, then Councillor Nichols.
I just want to say thank you for a clear and concise document, and I've sent you over any things that wish to incorporate or not, and so it's not really a lot more to say apart from the fact we're going on the right thing, and it's much easier to read than last year's one, which I was comparing it with. Thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Chair. I think 32 pages is a new definition of concise, personally, but it is clear, I won't disagree. Could you just explain what classes of external assurance you are intending to incorporate? Because I can think of some, but I'm not sure I'm thinking of the right ones.
Yeah, Kirsty.
Yeah, thank you ever so much. So I am relying on my colleague to my right, our Section 151 officer, to be making sure that I'm incorporating everything. So I'm thinking in terms of the external report that you have had already reported to you, the MHCLG report that was also mentioned earlier, a number of audit elements that have come in there that have fed into processes. So if there are particular things that you want to have referenced, then they will be included. But certainly, from my perspective, it's about reflecting what we have taken on from those audits and the work that's continuing on. So if there's sorry, I haven't got a concise list that I can give you, which is why I'm saying there'll be a list. But certainly, if Terry wants anything to add, but that's why I want to share it with you before you see it in the final version, to make sure there's nothing missed.
Okay, yeah, I believe Terry does have something to add.
Just to expand, I mean, that summarise it. So, in terms of external or independent sources of assurance, as Kirsty says, audit. So we've got both internal audit and we've got the annual audit opinion coming, I think, to the next audit committee, and that feeds in. That will be feeding into this document. We've got the external audit feedback, and in particular, we've got their value for money report which came before Christmas. We've got independent inspections, etc., such as the MHCRG deep dive, which has already been referenced. And of course, we also have the additional input from the commissioners. So there's a number of sources of assurance which we are drawing upon, as well as other internal review processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry, because I think that covers what I had in mind. I would have thought the most recent Commissioner's letter is the most valuable piece of, and any response from MLCHG to those letters.
Okay, yep, thank you. Yep, Councillor Bortflower.
Thank you, Chair. Kirsty, thank you very much for this report. Easy to follow, easy to read. Really good piece of work. I can guess from just a little bit of banter there about Appendix 4 that it's going to be quite a good few pages. So, but I think that's right. I do think it's right to have as much detail on that as possible. But thank you very much from what I've seen already. I've only really just looked at it because back on the committee again, but a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just to echo some of the previous comments, I think it's a really useful, realistic document. Some of the criticisms of previous ones are that they've tended to sugarcoat the situation, and that's certainly not the case with this one. I think it provides a sound basis for proper judgment and going forward proper assessments of future progress. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else from anybody. So we've provided comments to Kirsty directly and through our discussions this evening, and we look forward to seeing the next iteration of the document, which I think is coming to the next committee meeting. Which leads us on nicely to item 6, which is the committee forward plan. So this item can be found on pages 49 to 52 of the main agenda. Do members agree the forward plan for the work programme for this committee? Oh,
just one.
Yep.
Sorry, if I may, Chair.
Yes, yes.
I might have beaten Kirsty to it. Sorry, apologies, Kirsty. So on the forward plan on the second page, page 51, we've got report of the committee chair on behalf of the committee on the work of the audit committee going to the July committee. I think we need to bring that forward to the June committee so that it can then, if this committee agrees that report, that can then go to the July council meeting. Otherwise, there would be quite a long gap before the next scheduled council meeting, because the 23rd of July is after the July council meeting. And I know Kirsty's got that in hand already.
Yeah. If it's all right to just add, Chair, so following the same principles that we followed with the AGS, my intention is that once it's drafted, and certainly the Chair is sort of happy with it as a draft, that I would intend to, outside of the meeting cycle, share that with you as a committee to make sure that you've had sight of it and fed back any thing that you think needs to be tweaked before it's presented to you at that June meeting. So again, expect that imminently to be shared with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so, I mean, it looks like we've got quite a heavy agenda for the June meeting, but I totally understand that it would be best that the report gets presented to the July Council. So, yeah, I think we should fit that in and just make sure that we make time to do it. But, you know, as with the annual governance statement, which has been circulated and amended prior to the meeting, then, you know, hopefully it won't need a great deal of time at the committee meeting in June. Right, now, Philip, I believe you have something to say.
Yeah, thanks, John. In advance, I suppose I just wanted to think forward for a couple of items that that are on the June agenda. One of which is the external audit plan, which I think well, I have seen a draft that document has been produced. One of the things that I note in it is that the GT, the external auditors, are changing both the audit partner and the audit manager. I think this is particular, well, taking it from my perspective of being in practice as an auditor and the protocols and the things that you go through when, you know, inevitably things happen in an organisation and change has to happen. But I would have expected some form of communication of the why and the hopefully it's unavoidable, but also in particular, given the challenging audit closure meeting that we had last year, and quite representations from us as an audit committee of wanting to get more into the detail of particularly if a qualified opinion is proposed again, I think we should be demanding more detail of the auditors as to, given it is their third year, what they have got assurance over and what they haven't got assurance over. That would be hampered potentially by a new audit partner. I would like to, and if they can be prepared as they come to our meeting next month, to be assured that a new audit partner certainly will in no way, when we're challenging them at the end of the process, if we do, be saying, I wasn't the audit partner last year. It is the same firm, and I'd like to extract assurances from them that that wouldn't happen. And I'd also like to be able to make clear, hopefully as a committee, that you know, an adverse opinion would be very unwelcome. If it is such, it is their third year. There must be areas over things like where there are estimates and judgments, and they mean that they can't form a conclusion on balances, then that's fine. But certainly where there are things like properties, you know, knowing the number of properties and that they're in agreement with underlying records would be useful. Well, I think would be imperative. So I suppose I'd just like to bring those forward and ask that the auditors could be prepared to respond to those.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. A very good and pertinent comments. Yeah, Terry.
Yes, our quite informed colleagues may well be listening, but I will also, I'm reading the minutes, but also I will relay those points to them. In terms of the audit manager, that change happened, I think, a number of months earlier than the partner change, and so I certainly have confidence in terms of the transition, in terms of the manager, but I will relay the points.
I'm less concerned about the manager, but it's more the audit partner I think is more important.
Yes, and just for the record, I'm not suggesting I have any concern about the competence of the partner, but I understand in terms of the point you're making in terms of the explaining the context and also then articulating the approach in terms of demonstrating that level of assurance and how they're going to set that out, and that will be the opportunity for this committee when they come along to the next meeting, but I will feed that to the partner and the manager. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Is there any reason, has Sati left us or anything like that? We just don't seem to see that much of him.
Yes, actually, he has very recently effectively resigned, and that is very much down to workload pressures. He took on a new role, and then he effectively had additional pressures put on him. So he has, and he gave careful consideration. So he's stepping down. So what we will be doing very shortly is we'll be starting a selection exercise again to go out because it is important. We've got one really good now. That means we've got one really good independent lay member, but we want to have a second one as well. So we are going to try our best to recruit a second. Thank you.
Is there any of them point in reverting back to the list we had, or not really? Just start again.
Well,
I'm just thinking
we
for
can
how
look
long
at
it
that.
took.
We can look at that. But of course, those individuals may have moved on as well. So, but we'll bear that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, so do the members agree the forward plan for the work programme for this committee with just the updates of adding or bringing forward the annual committee chair, the report on the committee chairs? Yep, agreed. Thank you. Right, thank you. So I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for attending and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you all.